Hey everybody, how's it going? I am here today with Jules Schroeder. She is an entrepreneur and founder of the Forbes podcast Unconventional Life. It's a show hosted on Forbes that she was so nice to have me on just recently. And she is teaching millennials how to earn a living in non traditional ways. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Brian. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah,
Good to be
yeah.
here.
Yeah, cool, cool. Thanks for coming. What I found really interesting was that you launched your first really six-figure company at the age of 18, and you went on. You had a seven-figure company at 22, while doing digital marketing, consulting, and stuff for a lot of top companies. What was it like? Because I was also a young entrepreneur. What was it like for you as a young entrepreneur? And it's funny because I think a lot of people we highlight the successes, but people don't talk about the failures. So what I'm curious about was what were some of the worst moments? Let's start right off with that. What were some of the worst moments you had and the biggest struggles?
Yeah, great question. I like that too because you get these like introductions for anyone that's listening. You can like hear and it's like, crap, like how do I even like get to that? And I
Yeah.
was just in Vegas like a few days ago and this guy came up to me and he heard what I did and he's like, "So it seems like you really just like have it figured out." And it's like, no, I don't think no matter how much success that you've gotten, you really like it ever goes away.
Yeah.
The striving for more. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so entrepreneurship started. I was in an economics class in college and a clipboard got passed around. And it was like, hey, you want to make a bunch of money this summer? Write your name down. So wrote my name down on the clipboard. Had no idea where it was going to go next. Turns out it was an internship teaching you how to run your own business via a house painting business. And so at the time I was 18, grew up in Connecticut, was in Colorado at the University of Colorado, and was like, all right, not really super into house painting, but definitely down to learn about sales, marketing, clients, booking work. So in the first 3 months, I booked over $150,000 worth of work. Was the top manager in Colorado, beat all the guys, and at the time I was total hippie chick, my long like flowy skirts and drums and things like that.
Hmm.
But when I got into the production of it, I was producing 4 job sites at a time, and it literally was like it blew up in my face. We
Wow.
were overspraying cars, putting windows ladders through windows, having to like give homeowners kegs just to pacify things. So even in that, first venture, I learned early on that entrepreneurship wasn't all like dollars in the bank account,
Yeah.
though it was that. But the fulfillment of it, was definitely something else. But I think, as my entrepreneurial journey progressed, what really comes to mind was December of 2013. And at the time, I was running this successful publishing company. So me and two co-founders back in 2012, we figured out how to make books bestsellers on Amazon. And so we figured out these algorithms. We
Hmm.
turned it into a product, did a seven-figure launch, and then made a publishing company for people like Dave Asprey and Mindvalley and a bunch of others. And so, flash forward December of 2013, we'd been running this for about 2 years. I had just gotten back from skiing 26 mountains, 4 different countries in 30 days,
Wow.
was in France at the top of the world, dating my other business partner, well, one of my other two. And we get back and find out our third business partner had been embezzling a bunch of money and
Hmm.
overnight went into about $200,000 worth of debt. And at the time, working with us was about $30,000 per client. So all
Wow.
it took was a few refunds, and we were in over our heads thick. But it
Yeah.
took, many months of, dealing with the IRS, the DA, looking at someone who I know, liked, and trusted, who
Yeah.
had done that, and taking a break from the relationship with that boyfriend that I thought I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And, really over the better part of 8 months, like facing everything that I thought was important, the money, the status, the clients, the relationship, and ultimately getting to this like rock bottom place of losing everything just to realize that, I could actually create not just from my head and have success on someone else's terms, but there is actually another way of creating from my heart on my own terms. And I think my second half of my entrepreneurial career has definitely been that shift, but none of that would have happened had everything not come crashing down in the way that it did at that time. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. Wow, I didn't know that. It's tough to find good business partners because you never really know until you know you don't know, right? So it's you never know someone doing something like that, like embezzling money or doing something crazy like that. Now you mentioned consulting in there from some of these big clients. How did you get into that?
yeah, so I'm a big fan of just speaking what you want into reality with no attachments. And so, literally, just like sharing stuff for the sake of sharing
Yep.
and no attachment to how it's going to show up. case in point, like the Forbes thing. I literally
Yeah.
had said to my boyfriend, I was like, hey, I want to start writing for Forbes. A
Yeah.
week later, an email comes in from them. They're like, hey, can you start writing for us? And
Wow.
so, similar thing with the consulting. I'd been running the publishing company for a bit and had just started speaking. I was like, I think I want to do consulting. And at the time, everyone was talking about it. And I was, I think, like 23. And so I was like, yeah, consulting, that'd be cool. And so my friend of mine was friends with the founder for the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, IIN, which
Mm.
they do about 30 to 40 million a year, at least did when I was kind of working with them. They're the world's largest holistic health nutrition school. And
Mm.
so the founder came out to Colorado and we were hanging out, having a good old Colorado time. And he was working with my friend on a campaign. At the time, they did all of their sales over the phone. And so they're doing like 30 million a year and people would have to call in to give them their credit card. And so one morning, the founder called me up and was like, hey, Jules, like, I don't want to work with that guy anymore. Like, I want you to run point on this funnel, build out our video sales letter, build out our affiliate program, everything digital media. And he's like, are you in? And at the time, I was like, I've never done a consulting client before. Holy crap, this is like a really big client.
Yeah.
And so I said yes, and I took it on and worked with them for about a year. But we got all their stuff in place and increased their revenue by 30% in just the first few months. Shocking what going over the phone to the internet will do for a business.
Oh,
But,
absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how consulting and digital marketing started. But I realized that I had a knack for seeing holes in things people were doing. And I learned that from my dad at a young age, I think. And,
Yeah.
same with their business. Where are the missed revenue opportunities? How can I come in and create digital solutions to help? So it's been a fun little passion project ever
That's
since.
that's great. No, it's really inspiring too because I see a lot of people getting into consulting and they're not doing what you're doing. They're doing something else. They have this whole like fake it till you make it kind of attitude, and they want to teach themselves something while consulting and stuff. There's maybe some validity to it, but there's this whole like weird industry out there. So it's really cool to hear someone doing it. Sort of,
Yeah.
you're sharing something, you're doing it for the right reasons, you're finding the holes in their business, all that kind of stuff. What's if you had to give one like big value bomb, like just something that you feel that you're super passionate about, like a tip or a tool or something that people might not know about, what would you say?
Yeah, so this is the value bomb of the hell yes. And I literally, I was sharing about it in Vegas. I was speaking, and one of the guys there, he works with clients that do 10, 20 million a year. Huge consultant for like Neil Patel and a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of big online guys. And anyway, so I told him this concept, and he was like, I think I need to shut down my digital agency. And I was like, whoa, whoa, like let it integrate first. But what I learned after that transition between, the embezzlement and all of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
what happened next was I actually took 60 days off of doing everything. And what I realized is that when people said to me, follow your highest excitement, follow the things that light you up, I actually had no access to that. So it
Mm.
was like, how do I know how that feels to follow my highest excitement or
Yeah.
make a decision from your gut? I was like, that's not online for me.
Yeah.
And so for 60 days, my only intention was to exercise and flex that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be able to anything that felt like a hell yes, was automatically taking action on. And anything that was a no or not a clear read, I was just an automatic no or a not
Yeah.
right now too.
Yeah.
And, I told everyone in my life, like other business partners, family, friends, and it was like, hey guys, it might take me longer to respond to invitations, but know that like this is a skill that I'm working. And for anyone listening, you can even do this for like a week or even 24 hours. And something as simple as like, hey, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? Do you want to go out? Do you want to eat in? Feel into that. If it
Mm-hmm.
feels like a hell yeah, and when those invitations come, you're like, yeah, I'm totally in. Act on it. And if it's a no or kind of a maybe, just have that be a no altogether. Because what I've found is that often when you say yes to things that you feel like you should do, or it's kind of like, well, I guess I could go, they're kind of like blah experiences.
Yeah.
And, case in point, I was at 30 under 30 event in Boston, and I was one of those things where 3 days before I decided I'd go. And I got there, and the whole event was like, kind of just a blah
Mm.
experience. It wasn't like bad, but it wasn't one of those hell yeses. And so, if I could drop the value bomb, it would be to create a team, whether it's 24 hours or a week, and just literally check in every time someone asks you something. Is it a hell yes or is it a no? And if you start flexing that muscle, you'll basically build this skill set that when more important things come to you, like business opportunities or, invitations for podcasts or business partners, you can kind of check in and instantly you'll know if that's the right piece of the puzzle. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I think, leads you on your path to feeling fully in alignment with what you're up to in the world and, having
Yeah.
everything else just like kick ass from there. So,
Totally. That's amazing because I mean, I completely resonate with that. I find myself, I'll sometimes say, yeah, I guess I'll do that. And I'm like, it's not a hell yes. So it's kind of,
yeah,
you can tell by the way you say things. Like maybe you notice this too, but I can tell by the way I say things sometimes that, maybe I shouldn't do this, or you'll kind of close your posture up and say, no, I don't know, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And it's not a hell yes. So it's when you can get to that point of being like, nope, or hell yes, I think that's amazing. So I think that's really
yeah,
awesome. And I think you'd
yeah.
be a good person to ask this question, because I think you're a deeper person. What do you think? Like, what is your purpose? If you had to answer that question,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Yeah, such a good one. So for me, I think my purpose is really to stay as a clear channel. And so what I mean by that is one of the things I love doing is improving. I love
Mm,
making up full songs on the fly.
mm-hmm.
By far the most present moment experience. I've done this at the UN, at Summit Series, a lot of places. Literally, like, no idea what's going to come out of my mouth other than, like, hey, we'll do this in the key of A minor.
Mm,
And it requires me to just like stay as this open, clear space to let things come through. Another
mm.
case in point, I launched this event in Bali. Literally, it came out of a dream 8 weeks ago. I woke up and the words out of my mouth were Bali, 30 entrepreneurs. I don't do live events. I didn't like have a whole list to send this out to. And over the last 8 weeks, we sold out the event and I'm leaving for Bali tomorrow and we're going to host this
Oh wow,
kick-ass event. And
nice.
so it's allowing me to just be this open space. And I think this happens for a lot of us as we get these intuitive pings
Yeah.
or we get these ideas that come to us. And most of the time we have so much noise in our space
Mm-hmm.
that you can't really hear when those invitations come. And by removing a lot of that noise, that Hell Yes game is definitely a tool that you can
Yeah.
use to kind of do that. It allows the right things to come through. And my purpose in a lot of ways is staying that open space so that, when those things are coming, I can allow myself to really be of service for those things to come out in the world. And I do this most specifically with people, where I
Mm,
have this knack of being able to be with people, listen,
mm-hmm.
drop in, ask the questions, and then pull their gold out of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I gave this talk about, people are always like, how do I discover what my unique zone of genius is? Or how do I know what I'm really good at? And what's my life for? And what's my purpose? And I call it your stupid human trick. And it's the thing that you're exceptionally good at.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's the thing that gives you the most excitement. And most of the time, we only spend about 20% of our time there. Whereas if we were spending about 80% of our time there, one, we'd have a lot more fulfillment and enjoyment, but two, things in our life would work more.
Mm-hmm.
And a good test for this, your stupid human trick could be anything from like being a rapid implementer to someone that helps people connect the dots to someone that's really good at asking questions.
Yeah.
But I have this ability to literally stay this clear channel and kind of pull the gold or your stupid human trick or your unique zone of genius out of people. And literally after I gave this talk in Vegas, like people left and right were like, Jules, like help me figure it out. And it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, whoa, maybe I shouldn't have opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
But it was a cool real time experience for me to get to be in like my purpose or my zone of genius, and really get to experience that in relation to other people. So
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. Was it when you were telling those people, was that were you speaking in front of an audience, or was that a mastermind, or what was that?
yeah, it was really cool. It was like a 20-person entrepreneurial live event, and we were
Oh,
all
cool.
rented out this big mansion
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the Vegas Hills. So it's the first time I was in Vegas and
Oh,
not on the Strip, which was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. But so it was a really intimate space, and I led this hour and a half long workshop, very like Q&A style. And for
Mm,
anyone that's listening, I'll throw the invitation out there. If you're like, I'm not sure what my unique zone of genius is or this stupid human trick thing, I've got a pretty cool exercise. So feel free to send me an email or hit me up after that. I'm sure we'll give them the details towards the end. So
yeah, for sure. What would you say to people that they might have an idea for something, like they figure out their stupid human trick, or they figure something out, but they're afraid, like they have some fear of going forward. Like my fear was I didn't want to be seen. I would never have done a video, years ago, or I wouldn't be writing on different platforms, things like that. Like what would you tell to somebody that they kind of know what they want to do or have to do to go to the next sort of to expand, but they have a fear. What would you tell to somebody like that? How do they get past those fears? It seems like you would know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one, I would say your fear is totally valid and it's totally normal. And so I think the biggest trap or pitfall is that you'll have a fear and instantly you want to squash it. You're like, ah, I gotta like make this thing go away. Like I can't feel my fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing I would do would be allow it. Welcome that fear into
Mm.
your space. And if you just put some attention on it, which is usually the opposite thing people think to do, put some attention on the fear so that you can actually feel any emotions or past trauma, or usually a fear is related to like a past experience that never got completed or healed.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you allow that space to happen, that fear tends to kind of shift on its own. And so that would be like one little way to kind of go at it. And then the other piece is that, I get terrified all the time. And I think, even this Bali event was such a case in point. Like I woke up, I told my girlfriend who does retreats for a living, and she's like, Jules, like, this is awesome. Like, I'll come to Bali. Let me know when it's ready. I'll start promoting it to my list. And honestly, for 2 weeks, I was scared shitless. I was like, I can't do this. Like, there's just like, who's going to come? Why would people care?
Yeah.
And what I learned is even after I sold out like the first 7 spots, like I was still like, I got to give everyone their money back. Like, I am crazy. Like, this is ridiculous. It wasn't until like I think I had gotten to like 18 of the 30 spots that it was like, okay, cool. I think this is going to be all right now. But to the degree in which I allowed that fear to be present is the degree into the success that I was able to achieve. And so I think like that fear, like I still am confronted all the time, no matter how much success that I've had. And, I'm also a person that reinvents herself frequently,
Mm.
that, it's okay to have those fears. And so I would say that if you're dealing with a fear right now that's really confronting, know that you're not alone in that fear. And if you can just speak that fear, like take it out of your head, out of the monologue, get it into dialogue with another person and take action anyways, like that thing will disappear and complete on its own. And I get confronted all the time. And I think the only difference for me now is that I've just learned that, like, okay, like, hey, fear, glad you're there. Thanks for showing up. And I go and do whatever I want anyways. And
Mm.
so I would thank it, allow it, and yeah, take the action that you want anyways. Because, frankly, like, I don't think it ever goes away sometimes. And I think you can heal it and have your own confidence to an extent. But other times, I don't know, it can also be kind of a gift and a blessing at the same
Yeah.
time. It's like I'm still human check almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's interesting, especially that you constantly reinvent yourself, and I feel that way too about myself. But I'm curious, who, as a kid, okay, take me back to as a kid. Who or what did you want to be as a kid?
yeah. So I grew up as the oldest of 5 girls.
Okay.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked Wall Street in New York City. So he basically left at like 6 in the morning, was gone till 9 o'clock at night. His
Mm.
mom was a Puerto Rican immigrant. Dad died when he was young. So he was like worked his way up the chain. And so
Mm.
I had a lot of independence as a kid.
Mm.
And I was always the girl, surprisingly enough or not, would be on like the playground or at school and I'd be delegating everyone like the different roles of whatever game we were playing. Or, it was just kind of like leading charge at dinner because my mom had so many babies. So I'd kind of be, making stuff happen. But I think as a kid, I really wanted to be a professional musician
Mm.
and I wanted to be a singer. And being like the firstborn, and my dad having worked so hard, he was always like, you just can't make it as a singer. You just like, like
Mm.
you're gonna have to sacrifice something if you want to be a professional artist. And so I would sing. I did things like American Idol, got down to like the top 200 people when I was
Wow.
16 and had validation for my singing. Yet it was always this thing in the background where it was like a very much an either or kind of reality.
Yeah.
And, it really like, it sucked in a lot of ways because I was so passionate about this thing. And it was like, when I was going to college and applying for college, it was like, oh, I actually would rather just study music. And it was like, no, like become a business major or like study communications. And I ended up getting my degree in communications. And so
Hmm.
I think growing up, I didn't have as much freedom and choice to reinvent
Mm.
as I do now. And I attribute a lot of that really to my journey with like personal development, personal growth work. I did the Landmark Forum when I was 18. And I don't know, for those that have heard of Landmark, International Personal Development Agency, and various other books and circling and authentic relating training and things like that. But it's only been in the 9 years of working on myself that I've kind of been able to
Mm.
like rewind or untangle a lot of
Mm,
the like desire I had as a kid and have freedom to choose now. And when you think about it, when you're a kid, it's like the whole world is possibility for us and you can do anything you want. And then as you get older, like the world of possibility gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
yes.
And one of the things I love about personal development is it's kind of like a gateway or an access point to allowing that world to kind of open back up again. And, that's a lot of what happened for me. And, now I've definitely figured out a way to combine my love of music with my love of business. But it wasn't always that way growing up. So,
Yeah. No, it's great because I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, they think that entrepreneurship and business even is only about learning practical things about business, but they don't realize how important self-development is because it's you are the also you're the vehicle, right? So I think,
yeah.
you know, developing yourself in lots of different areas, personal development included, is extremely important. Do you have any books you recommend, or how can someone, if they, they maybe they have got the sort of entrepreneur thing sort of figured out a little bit, but on the personal development side, they're sort of struggling. Like, where would you recommend someone start with something like that?
Yeah. So I think books are great. But I often hear from people like, I read book after book after book, and I like nothing's changing.
Yeah,
And so, I would recommend the Landmark Forum, which have you ever done Landmark
I
before?
haven't. No, I think I've heard of it though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did this for reference point. It's a weekend seminar and I did it 9 years ago. So I'm still
Mm.
talking about it. And, what it basically does is it takes all of the past, all of the experiences that you've had, that both like negative and the limiting beliefs that you kind of naturally accumulate over your life. And over the course of the 2 days, it allows you to complete those experiences so that you have nothing in your future except
Mm.
room to basically create anything that
Yeah.
you want. And it's like $500. And
Hmm.
so for like the price point and for the amount of time that's spent, it's like hands down the fastest accelerator to clear out limiting beliefs. And if there are
Mm.
areas in your life that you're not as effective as you want to be in, or areas that are not working as well as you'd like them to, this seminar literally gives you tools that you can apply in those
Nice.
areas like immediately, but also for the rest of your life. And yeah, it's like magic. Like things like disappear and complete. And what's great about it is it actually doesn't teach you anything new. All it does is actually go to work on removing all the things you already know so
Hmm.
that you can get access to the things that you don't know that you don't know. So it's a pretty cool little thing. But I would say, hands down, start with Landmark. It's like in 125 different countries. They've got them in major cities all over the world. So any international people, yeah, the Landmark Forum, I'd check that out.
No,
And
that's great.
yeah, I'd start there.
Yeah,
So.
no, it's great. What would you say was the big aha moment for you? Let's change gears a little bit. You had some struggles, you've had successes. Where was that middle point of like, you started something really clicked and you had that big aha moment. What would you say? Where was that for you?
Yeah. So I've had a few uh, over the course of the time. One that comes to mind was actually the summer of 2015.
Hmm.
So I had this near-death experience
Oh
via
wow.
a wakeboarding accident, and I was a sponsored snowboarder for a year and big athlete, and so once, summer day, I was out wakeboarding, jumped the wake, caught an edge, face planted, and was like, dang, like I hit hard. And I
Jeez.
didn't think I was seriously hurt because of my athletic background. But an hour later, I got off the boat and remembered being in the bathroom and started losing feeling in my body and things got really tingly. And I just like barely got out of there. I looked at my girlfriend. I was like, I need to go to the hospital. Like something's not right. And I don't remember much of the ride there,
Mm.
but I remember coming out of the MRI and this white figure in six black shadow council member came towards me
Mm.
and we had this out of body conversation and it
Wow.
was like, Jules, you have more work to do in the world, do you want to do it? And I said yes, as long as my body works and I'm not coming back as a vegetable. I thought my neck might have been broken and was
Yeah.
paralyzed, and I remember getting zapped back into my body and I felt this energy forge my neck back together and shoot down my spine.
Wow.
And the doctor walked in like maybe 10 minutes later and he's like, somehow your neck isn't broken. And it was just like a crazy experience. Was in the hospital for a while, neck brace for a few months, and took a little while to get the feeling back. But after having that experience, it literally was like going to the other side. And I know you've had your near death
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a younger kid.
For sure.
And so
Yeah.
you get this
I'm
sense.
getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah, but it literally like to be that present in what kind of like the other world of
Yeah.
that like incident love, and then to have the opportunity to come back in human form and have choice of like, oh, there's more work to do, was unbelievably powerful. And who I was before, I mean, it was a distinct shift of who I've been since. And it was almost like, I talked about that shift, the journey from the head to the heart via the embezzlement, the 60-day
Yeah.
game, and then kind of back. And it was almost like this near-death experience was like the culmination of like, okay,
Yeah.
and transition complete. Go
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
go forth. And so, it was challenging for the first few months because on one degree, things were happening like crazy. I literally got a call to consult this woman for marketing, and it turns out she was working with the UN on the Global Goals campaign. And I was like, I have this education initiative that came to me in a dream. And anyways, I was at
Yeah.
the UN 3 weeks later working on this thing called Create You. And then Forbes Under 30 calls me, and it's like dominoes of things effortlessly falling into
It's
place.
incredible.
But then on the other side, I'm also having this like, holy shit, how do I even like know what it's like to even be a human being
Yeah.
after like having this thing where in a lot of ways
Yeah.
it felt really apathetic. And it was just like, what's even the point of all of this? Like, why do we have so much significance on success and on money and all these
Yes.
things? It's like,
Yes.
none of that shit even matters, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's been this dual thing, but I think the aha, the gem in it was really allowing me to like literally pop out of the human
Yeah.
experience,
Yep.
to come back and to really realize that the things that we find to be so significant, whether it's the thing we're like wanting in our business or that like press article or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
if you actually remove significance from those things and you play them like a game where, there's no significance, it's just fun, pure play, almost like childlike play,
Yeah.
Committed to things, but no attachment to how they're showing up. It gives rooms for things that are naturally meant to show up. Like I mentioned, the UN and the Forbes thing to come into play, but also allows you to have more fun in the moment
Oh
by
yeah.
moment experience. And I think, that mantra of living life like a game has, definitely been instilled, full spectrum since that experience. But I think, yeah, for anyone listening, like if things feel really heavy and significant, like step back. And if you're noticing resistance, press pause, because following the ease and things to open as they should is usually where the gold is. So,
That's incredible.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's yeah, as you said, I've also had a near-death experience and although I can't completely feel how you feel, I resonate with that. But I've, and you may find this too, but I find it very hard to share the story. And I think a lot of others may have similar stories or other types of deep stories that they may want to get out, but they may be struggling to get out there. What So does and tell me, I'm just curious, like how does it feel when you share your story? Do you feel good? Does it feel like do you feel like chains have been lifted off you, or what does it feel like?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's been times where I've shared that story where
Mm.
like I've actually started crying because
Yeah.
I've been so moved by the experience.
Yeah.
And then there, are times where like the one I just shared, it was like, wow, like okay, I actually like the language worked, like the
Yeah.
experience and the language was like effective.
Yeah.
And I think right after the experience, and also for those listening that have these kinds of stories, like it was really hard at first to start talking about that story
Yeah.
because I felt like no one could relate to what I was saying. I didn't have the language to be able to share it in the way that I was experiencing it. And fortunately, like I've got a gift with words, but if you're someone that like it doesn't come as naturally to talk, like that's
Yeah.
really challenging.
Oh,
It's
totally. Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
totally challenging. And yeah, it was really isolating for a while because it was
Yeah.
like I really want, I think as human beings, we all want to feel connected. We want
Right.
we want to feel understood and we want to feel seen. And when you have a really big experience and you don't get to feel understood or seen, it's really isolating and really lonely. And
Definitely.
so, if I could give a piece of advice for anyone that might be sitting on a story that feels that way in this moment, the way that I got through that was just by sharing it more.
Yep.
And so you don't have to start like on a huge podcast and share it with the world. But if you
Yeah.
start by sharing it, maybe at first it's in your journal and then it's
Right.
to one really like close friend, the ripple effect from there goes out. And often the things that you think are really vulnerable are the things that people need to hear. And when you're willing to give your vulnerability to someone or bring it into the space, it's an invitation for others to do the same. And so know that that vulnerability is a big gift. And so it's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why I like bringing it, on something like this, that even if anyone listening, if one person is like inspired through that, then it was a hell yes. So
Yeah. That's great. You said the vulnerability is a big gift. That's incredible. That's really profound if you think about that. I think there's a lot to that. That's really great. Um, yeah, so I mean, I think your story is incredible. I think that, people are gonna see that, they may have short stories to share too. How do you feel as a podcaster yourself? You know, sort of extracting stories out of others. Like what advice would you give to? Oh, let's go on the other side of that. What advice would you give to somebody that says they want to get their story out there, they want to share it on a podcast like yours or another podcast? What are some interviewing all these people that you have and some very successful people and just lots of interesting people. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to share their message out there?
Yeah, it's a great question. The theme of the podcast, for those that don't know, is all about people who earn their living in non-traditional ways. And so I've literally heard a lot of stories,
Yeah,
as you might imagine.
exactly.
Um, But I think the big thing to keep in mind with stories is that sometimes it can be really easy to make the story just about you,
Hmm.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
your experience. And that, is great. And I think there's a time and a place for the story to be about you and your experience. And with other people, when you open it up, so the story actually becomes a tool
Yeah.
for other people to connect to something in themselves. When you think about it and you hear a great story, it's when you can see yourself in the other person's story, that's when light bulbs start going off for you.
Yes.
And so for someone that, wants to share their story, it's really thinking about like the other people in mind
Hmm.
of like, how can you tell this story in a way that is like the most factual, right? Like we all put interpretations on our stories too of like our
Totally.
different spins, but the most like accurate of like, this is what happened. And when you keep it more towards like, this is what happened, and you're literally telling the story from that perspective, it kind of gets rid of the clutter and it keeps it really clean, energetically speaking, at least, where, people can start to hear themselves in those stories. And so, yeah, so if you're new to storytelling and you want to kind of practice the skill a little bit, one, I would start just like sharing your story and asking feedback from people. And
Yeah.
like, hey, like, how was that for you?
Yeah.
Did you get anything from that? And as you're telling your story, like pausing frequently to be like, how's this landing? Like, is
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
making sense? And slowly you'll start to kind of get the distinction between you and the other person and like what's happening over here and how it's translating over there. And ultimately, be able to deliver a story that is like super impactful. And I know that a lot of my guests and a lot of people that listen to the Unconventional Life Show, it's through the storytelling that people get the most value rather than the specific, like, here's step 1 through 10 of advice to implement right now. It's in people's stories that people have those aha moments. So know that I think that's one of the best tools to deliver that. So
Totally. Yeah. I see. It's interesting what you said about slowing down too, because I think a lot of people, talk a mile a minute and they try to get in every little thing and they try to stuff in all these like, salesy kind of messages about themselves. But when you make it about the other and about the audience listening, I think that's infinitely more valuable to people. Nobody wants to, I mean, it's cool to share a story, but it's more when you get takeaways from that are relatable. I think that's when people
yeah,
really connect with you. And that's how people build big audiences too. They find something about you that they
totally.
connect with. They go, "Oh wow, what Jules said is, I didn't have that exact same thing happen, but something connected about her story, about some of the details she shared." And I think the details are also um, really important. Changing
Yeah.
gears a little bit, what's something you're really fired up about today?
Yeah.
Maybe there's
So I'm
many.
actually, yeah. So I'm really fired up actually about this whole unconventional life brand
Yeah.
and the podcast and all of that. And I only say that because so when I started writing, I got the invitation for Forbes. At the time, I actually like was not a writer. I didn't really
Wow.
consider myself a writer. I considered myself a speaker, and I wrote, marketing copy. But I didn't have I hadn't been blogging for my whole life. It was something where my first ever full blog post appeared on Forbes, and
That's
I was
incredible.
literally sitting in Iceland
Wow.
outside of a hot springs on a little like hotspot Wi-Fi device, and I hit
Wow.
send, like, sitting next to my boyfriend. I'm like, I just don't know if I can do this, and blah blah blah, and like it got like I don't know, like 5,000 views over
That's
the first few
amazing.
days. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, people like it, and comments came in, and it was really nerve-wracking because that was really like
Yeah, that's you went
writing
right to
was
the
not a
top. That's like one of the
yeah.
biggest publications you can be on. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, but similar to you, I know like how you had a fear of writing, and you kind of, I mean, look, you've created Influencive and this whole
Hmm.
platform out of it, and yeah. So I think for me, being able to write and then ultimately create an accountability structure where I was like, okay, Forbes, I'll do 5 episodes a week where, we take our podcast and we embed it into the article. So I'm committing to writing like 5 blog posts a month. And for the first 4 months, I did 2 a week. So that was like eight
Yeah.
blogs a week. So to
It's
go
not
from
easy.
not, yeah, to go from not writing to writing that much,
Yeah.
like it was taking me like sometimes 8 hours per writing piece. And I was like, this just isn't
I believe it.
sustainable.
Yeah.
And but ultimately I got better, and writing has become way more natural, and it's really cool to
Yeah.
have a whole new outlet of self-expression beyond just talking and things like that. But unconventional life was really a side project. It was a hobby, and it wasn't until this past August where I had this dream. The Bali event got birthed, and there was such a great response that it was like, whoa, I think there's something more. And we get about 10,000 views. Listens per episode, about 60 to 70,000 a month. And I was telling a friend of mine that has remote year, and he's like, you get that much listens? Like, why is this not, why is this not a business? And so,
Hmm.
yeah, so we made the decision to really put some time and attention into it. And so, we've
Yeah.
grown it into this content platform where, similar to like Influencive style, where we're going to
Yeah.
be adding maybe a few other contributors and things like that. But
Nice. That's
ultimately,
great.
yeah, we're launching this like entrepreneur school in January, which
Oh,
is like
cool.
the practical advice for how to take everything on unconventional
Yeah.
life and put it out there. But
That's great.
excited by it because it was something that wasn't on my radar. Totally done on pure passion, and now it's like grown into this thing, and it's got me really fired up. It's like being an entrepreneur all over again, like starting
Yeah.
from nothing. Yeah, it's
It's
got me
great.
super jazzed.
No, I think in many cases you have to sort of think like that as an entrepreneur, like you're starting from nothing. And it's kind of, it's what there's books out now. There's one called The Power of Broke, and I think there's validity to it because if you think of it like that, if you're at your most hungriest, you're gonna really want a snack, right? So if you're at that state, you can really sort of drive forward. Rather, when you live a cushy, comfortable life, I think it can be people can tend to be lazier. So for more successful entrepreneurs, I think you have to find that hungry state where you really want to do it for a greater purpose. And I think that
Yeah,
and I can tell for you everything you're doing is clearly for a great. It's not making money is one thing, but doing it for a greater purpose bigger than you, I think, is extremely important. I can tell you're doing that even just with the name of it, but with the whole mission behind it. So that's really incredible that you're doing that.
yeah,
What
totally.
parting advice would you give to people? It's you've shared a lot of valuable things. What's one thing you would really want to share if you had to share one big thing?
Yeah. For a lot of times I thought success was, linear in some ways. And I focused, especially my like first half of my entrepreneurial journey, was it was very driven by revenue and dollar amount and
Hmm.
external gratification. And that was my measures of like, am I successful or am I not?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it can be like the biggest entrepreneurial pitfall.
Hmm.
Because even though you're doing what you want and your own boss and you have all the freedom in the world, you actually become, this slave to what you're
Yeah.
working on. And it can cripple you. And you can be
Yeah.
working 18 plus hour days, which I've been a victim to. And as a result, like, lose all the things that you like. Maybe it's working out or eating good food or having really good relationships or travel. And so, if I could bestow one last thing, is that in order to find true alignment, like the intersection between, passion and purpose and
Hmm.
profit, is really in making sure that everything in your life is like literally up leveling. And
Hmm.
so if you're having success in your business, how does it look like with your significant other if you have one? Like how's the
Hmm.
success at home? How like are you actively creating your relationship in the same way that you're creating your business? Are you working out as often as you want? I for me, I CrossFit and I do yoga like 6 days a week because I
Wow.
have to get my like crazies out in the morning or I'm just not, I don't show up effectively. And so I would say look at one area of your life. If you think about it right now, what is one area of your life that isn't working as well as you'd like it to? One area you don't feel totally like you're at the top with success at. And just as an inquiry and as a game, like focus your attention there for the next 30 days. Like put active energy onto it. And it could be like, hey, the relationship with my girlfriend or my boyfriend's kind of flat. It
Hmm.
feels a little on autopilot, a little routine. Like what fun things could you like throw in there? Could you surprise him or her? Could you, ask a really provoking question? Or could you just say, hey, our relationship feels a little flat. Like I'd love to feel like super connected again. How can we create it? And so even something like that, guaranteed you'll get results in that area, but watch the ripple into all the other
Mm-hmm.
areas of your life, especially your business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's by far like my secret fuel. With the success that I have doing business stuff is like I just start transforming other areas of my life, and that just like direct proportionally increases along the way. So
No, it's incredible. I think because all areas of our life really are connected. Everything is connected, right? So that's really
yeah,
incredible. Um, no, but thank you so much for doing this. It was really great. I think you dropped some incredible, insightful things here, and you shared some deep stuff. So I think thank you very much for doing this.
yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Brian, and Influencive audience. It's great to be on here, and yeah, we're doing this exciting little partnership coming up, which is awesome. Where
Yeah.
we'll actually be taking the Unconventional Life show over to Influencive and doing a lot more collabs as well. So I look forward to connecting with you guys more and more play and fun nuggets to come.
Where
So
can they find you more? Like, you've got unconventional life. Where can people go to find out more?
yeah, so head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/unconventional life show. You can obviously go to unconventionallifeshow.com, or if you're just like an iTunes person, just search for Unconventional Life. And then Jules at Unconventional Life Show, if you want any help distilling the uniques in a genius thing, or you want that exercise I mentioned earlier, and julesschroeder.com if you want to check out some music videos for some other entertainment and fun. So
Awesome. Thanks again.